Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed since last time. Obama killed Breitbart? Radio host, filmmaker, and one-man conspiracy theory clearinghouse Alex Jones responded to the recent death of sentient rabies virus Andrew Breitbart by suggesting that perhaps President Barack Obama had had him killed. Jones's reason?
Is that within 2 hours of him being announced to be dead, the LA Times had the headline, "Dead of natural causes." And they said, we don't know why, and the hospital doesn't know, but it's natural. But with Whitney Houston, it took 6 days.
As usual, there's no arguing with Alex's logic, but why would President Obama want to have Andrew Breitbart killed?
Andrew Breitbart had said 2 weeks ago at CPAC and other meetings that he had the video, that he had the film when Obama was at college and all of his corrupt connections to communists and other groups, and that he was going to release it all and destroy him.
That must be one hell of a video. And as it happens, Breitbart's website released that very video last week. And all I can say is, Obama killed Breitbart for this? So back when he was a student at Harvard Law School, Barack Obama spoke at a rally held in support of Professor Derek Bell, who had recently announced his intention to take an unpaid leave of absence to protest the school's failure to add a black woman to its tenured staff. Obama told those assembled at the rally to open their minds and hearts to the words of Professor Derek Bell. And then when Bell stepped up to speak, Obama gave him a hug. And that's it. That's the video that Alex Jones thought might have been a motive for murder, and that the likes of Sean Hannity and Breitbart's even less impressive proteges, Ben Shapiro and Joel Pollak, are now using as an excuse to dust off their old charges of Obama's radicalism, which didn't work 4 years ago. And what is so controversial about the late Professor Derek Bell, by the way? Well, if you listen to Hannity and Shapiro and Pollak, it's that he didn't believe America's racial problems ended in the 60s with the legislative achievements of the Black Civil Rights Movement. That radical bastard. You know, even though it's horseshit, this story does kind of interest me because I think Andrew Breitbart is the first person I've ever seen to grasp at straws from beyond the grave. Misogyny reascendant. Hey, have you noticed how it's okay to shit on women again? Attempts to cut government funding for Planned Parenthood are ongoing. The governor of Virginia just recently signed a bill into law requiring women to undergo a medically unnecessary and invasive vaginal probe ultrasound procedure before getting an abortion, and a certain talk show host spent 3 days on the air trashing a woman who dared to testify before members of Congress in favor of a contraception mandate. And to think a lot of these same He-Man woman-hater types are pushing for us to start a war with Iran. I don't know, that confuses me a little. It seems like Iran would be just their type of place. The powerlessness of prayer. An outbreak of tornadoes in the Mid-South and Ohio Valley regions of the U.S. killed over a dozen people at the end of February. Naturally, in times of tragedy, we look for meaning and understanding in the words of the wisest members of our society. People like Pat Robertson.
Why did God send the tornadoes?
God doesn't send tornadoes to hurt people. He doesn't send, we call them acts of God, but they're not. All I can say is that why do you build houses in a place where tornadoes are apt to happen? You can pray, God, Jesus stilled the storm. You can still storms. But, the hurricane, for example, is a release mechanism that God set in to take the heat out of this world and to transfer heat around various parts of the globe. It's very necessary.
Let's pretend for a moment that that bit about prayer being able to still storms isn't complete horseshit that no honest, intelligent person could possibly believe. If tornadoes occur because they're a natural and inevitable component of our weather, and then everybody prays and stops the tornadoes, what happens then? How does the heat get redistributed, or whatever the fuck Robertson was talking about? Does God just reach down directly and miracle something? And if he's willing and able to do that, why not just do it that way to begin with and leave the tornadoes out altogether? Leaving that aside, how big of an asshole do you have to be to blame the victims in a tornado? The absurdity of Rush Limbaugh. Illustrating absurdity by being absurd. That's what Rush Limbaugh says he does, and that's what he claims he was doing when he suggested that Sandra Fluke post a sex tape online to compensate the rest of us for all that contraception we're supposedly subsidizing. And I have no doubt that Rush was kidding when he said that. The problem with what he said, and with Rush in general, isn't that he's incapable of making a joke. It's that he's so fucking bad at it. Illustrating absurdity by being absurd. Another word for that is satire. But how many satirists do you know of who have had to explain themselves as often as Rush does? I mean, look at the work of some real satirists. Watch some Stephen Colbert, or watch an episode of All in the Family, or read some Mark Twain, or some Voltaire, or some Jonathan Swift. Read A Modest Proposal, and tell me where in that piece Jonathan Swift pauses to assure his reader, don't worry, I know this sounds pretty twisted, eating babies and all, but relax, I'm exaggerating to make a point. You won't find it. Why? Because Swift, unlike Limbaugh, is a skilled satirist and doesn't need to spell it out for us. We get it, see? A commenter on a video I recently made about the Sandra Fluke Rush Limbaugh incident brought up the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's what we call it when someone is blind to their own incompetence and constantly overestimates their own abilities. Sound like anyone we know? The hardest part is only picking 5. Catch you next time.